Hello, hello. Welcome to another All Hands on Deck. I'm Catherine McBean, and today I'm just going to do a really quick overview because I want to state off the bat I am absolutely no expert or specialist in this topic. It's something I've kind of I looked at very closely, sort of 2018, 2019. And then when 2020 came along, I did lose focus. I did. So I am a little bit cagey around some of the details. And to be fair, even most people in the US don't actually really understand what happened, what the status is now, although we've had DNI, Tulsi Gabbard come out and talk about it in recent weeks. So I'm just going to give a really brief overview to those that know nothing, but there's bound to be loads of people out there who know a heck of a lot more than me. What I'm interested in is just sort of highlighting the UK role in some of this stuff and what that could look like moving forward. So today we're talking about the Russian collusion story. And for those that aren't aware, basically, just to sort of tie it up very briefly, although it's incredibly complex, is how the US intelligence agencies were weaponized to go after Donald Trump based on a faulty dossier that was used to create what is called a FISA warrant, to go after or spy on a guy called Carter Page and other members of Trump's team. And I think it was 2015 it kicked off. So he was still very much in a candidate position, hadn't even become POTUS at this point. And what happened was, as far as we're aware at the moment, based on what we know, is that somebody from Trump's campaign team, a guy called Papadopoulos, I think his name is, got drunk one day and said that they had, let's say, conversations with some Russians, and said this to an Australian, I think he was a senator. And that guy, it ended up getting back to the deep state effectively. And they thought, great, this is an opportunity for us to go after Trump's team legitimately. So they wanted to, in order to get a FISA warrant, which isn't easy to do because it gives them the right to spy on US citizens fundamentally. I mean, I'm really taking this book all back to a basic level, very basic level. So they wanted to get this FISA warrant. And in order to get this FISA warrant, they needed some form of evidence to suggest that there was some betrayal in the background taking place in terms of Trump's team working with Russians to swing the 2016 election into Donald Trump's favor. That was the bottom line of what they were kind of basing this on. And so they needed this evidence to bring to the courts in order to get this FISA warrant, in order to justify them spying on Trump's campaign team. And as we know, it went on further into his presidency. So what happened was there's a guy called Christopher Steele, who was a former MI6 agent who ran the Russia desk, if you like, in the UK, and was dealing with the agents, Russian agents, who were working for us effectively. Plus, he wanted to know everything that was going on with Russia, which was his job, but he was allegedly the expert guy. And they painted Christopher Steele as this kind of James Bond agent, and so smooth, and you know, ex-Oxford grad and all the rest of it. So Christopher Steele writes this evidence-based document, which has come to known as the Steele dossier. And it was paid for so it's paid for by the DNC, so the Democrat National Convention, so the DNC and the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Clinton's gang. And they kind of siphoned it through something called Perkins Coie, which is like a law team, effectively, and a company called Fusion GPS. And that's how Steele got paid for this Steele dossier that was then used, taken to the courts, used to get the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. And that's what they did. And immediately, the media, once this dossier was alive and kicking, the media, the foul media, the lying media, jumped on it, all over it. Now, very interestingly, the BBC did. And we know how Trump feels about the BBC right now, don't we? So the BBC published, and they did hundreds of articles and interviews and all the rest of it around this Steele dossier, and how, you know, Christopher Steele was clearly a legend and a hero for highlighting just how corrupt the Trump campaign was, and they were colluding with Russia to win the 2016 election in Donald Trump's favor. So Clinton's money was behind it. Now, those that backed this, and this is where the treason comes into play. So you had James Clapper, who was the DNI, Director of National Intelligence. You had James Comey, who was the head of the FBI. And you had one of the most disgusting human beings who's ever walked the face of this planet, as far as I'm concerned, was a guy called John Brennan, who was the head of the CIA. And these guys got together, got behind this, and backed it as being genuine. And they used this to spy on so many in the Trump campaign. Now, where does Britain come into this? Well, we've already got the connection with the MI6 because of the Steele dossier. Although retired, he was still very much considered the specialist on Russian intelligence impact on a global scale. Then you had the BBC, who could not shut up about this. You know, they were all over it like a rash, doing their job as the deep state arm of media for the UK. And globally as well, but predominantly as we know it for the UK. But interestingly, GCHQ, although during the Mueller investigation, which the investigation conducted to see what this Russian collusion story was all about, and that was all swayed, and Mueller had dementia, and it was a whole other thing. GCHQ passed some of the information along to John Brennan and others who are working on this in terms of what they had found out about the Russia collusion and who was involved. And they didn't get penalized in any way during the Mueller report, but it's very interesting that GCHQ was straight in there, adding their 2 bobs worth to pushing this Russia collusion story. So we had our fingers involved with it. And although they got away with it in terms of the Mueller report, as did too many, it's very interesting that once again, the UK was involved very quietly in the background. We didn't necessarily come, we seem to work in a certain way. We try to maintain our innocence by only doing little things and just being able to justify those things based on intelligence, but keeping our hands clean on the surface of it. I do think personally that's all going to blow up one day. So you had this happen. So right now we've got Hillary Clinton implicated via the Clinton Foundation funding the production of the Steele dossier. Interestingly, at the time, the person pushing the support of this from the Clinton campaign was her campaign manager. Guess who was her campaign manager at the time? John Podesta. And we all know who John Podesta is, do we? If you don't, just to explain, he is highly implicated, thank you to the WikiLeaks email document dump, which is where part of this stemmed from, because they tried to express that the emails hacked into the DNC. So the DNC was holding all these emails. Someone allegedly hacked in, stole a bunch of the emails, and it was implicated that it was Russia who did it. And that was some of the justifying reasons that were given for the Clinton involvement in the Russia collusion story. When in fact, some evidence would suggest that a whistleblower guy called Seth Rich dumped a load of the Clinton emails into WikiLeaks and then ended up getting shot in the back. God bless you. Rest in peace, Seth Rich. So anyway, this is where we're sort of taking you along on this journey. But there was don't get me wrong, there was so many more other things going on as well. And I'm just trying to, being that I'm no expert, just trying to give a foundational explanation as to what actually happened and why I think the UK are going to be implicated far more than we're seeing at the moment, because it will come out. So that's how you had Clinton getting involved with it. But then obviously Trump wins the 2016 election, and they did not see that one coming. The bad guys were not happy about this. They thought they'd done enough to throw it off. Whether they were trying to steal the election then, I don't know. There has been suggestion that was the case, but I hope in the fullness of time we'll discover that. So what we then discovered is these all carried on. So all this spying on the that was then the Trump admin was still taking place under the same FISA warrants that had been got when they were campaigning. Now, where this leads back to is the fact that it's now shown, and this is what now DNI Tulsi Gabbard is bringing to the fore publicly. But bear in mind, we guys who were into this knew this back in 2018, 2019, 2020, that these things have been going on, was that Obama authorized the continued spying of the Trump administration. During that period, from when Trump was elected in November through to when he proactively became POTUS in the January, Obama had suggested the spying continue and was working in tandem with Clapper and Comey and Brennan to make that happen. Now, obviously, that's then treason when you have no true basis to run it off. And it was all just stemming around this Steele dossier. So a British gentleman, an English gentleman, created this dossier that has caused all this treason to be conducted on as based as evidence. And now he comes out and says, well, about 70% of it was definitely true. Now, can I just say, before we carry on, Christopher Steele is still walking around free as a bird in the UK. But not only that, when he retired, which was 2009 or something, he created a private intelligence consulting service, which predominant focus was on Russia and Ukraine. And he has been working, and he's got strong connections to the UK Parliament, and has been helping support, allegedly, the current and previous government in their actions against Ukraine, for Ukraine against Russia. So again, Christopher Steele, whilst now his part in the story was supposedly done, in terms of how that impacts us in the UK, where we're sending weapons and money and goodness knows what over to Ukraine to push back against Putin in Russia. And this guy's one of the guys that allegedly is advising the UK government when he's already been involved in a treason. And I mean, people are saying when this comes out, it's bigger than Watergate. Within a treasonous operation in the United States. Yet he's advising our government, apparently. Now, to this day. So this isn't just stuff that happened 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. He's still mooching around in the UK doing his thing today. So anyway, so what it basically leads back to is the fact that it goes to the very top. It goes to Obama. And I'm currently, just as a side note, digging on some stuff that colleagues pulled up. It's not my work, that colleagues pulled up in terms of, you know, these disinformation organizations that I've been speaking about over the last few weeks. Well, some of them we can lead back to Obama. So this is all, and then you wonder why Trump is so aggrieved with the BBC. This isn't just about him having that edited speech issue. This will go back a lot further, and I'm in no doubt he will at some point bring this up potentially. So anyway, it is still ongoing. There hasn't really truly been an outcome. You had the Mueller report and you had the Durham report all coming in. It was all very wet. Very empty. There were some key nuggets in there that does point to the Clinton Foundation and so forth. But what is exciting, because all these years it's been pulling on and pulling on. I mean, they raided Mar-a-Lago. So when the FBI went in, where are we? 2 years ago now, and raided Mar-a-Lago, they were actually, what we believe, was looking for the evidential documents to show that the likes of Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Adam Schiff, who was on the oversight committee, all of these really dirty deep state players were involved in this fraudulent and then thus treasonous attempt to spy on the Trump campaign and Trump administration. And they went in and they wanted these documents, and apparently they came away empty-handed. I don't think Trump is stupid enough to have them on site, but we're now seeing DNI Gabbard come out and say, I now have evidence of Obama committing treason. And so this is a slow drip in for the American people at the moment. Well, people across the world, but this is what we're starting to see happen. They're slowly starting to drop that in. So we've now got Clinton and Obama implicated, who we know are a couple of deep state players, and it's going to blow open bigger than Watergate when it comes out. And actually, the truth about Watergate's pretty bad as well. So if you haven't done your research on that, go and look at that one as well. So I just wanted to give a really basic overview of what the Russian collusion is, why it's so big, because this leads back in so many ways. It implicates the FBI, the CIA, the DNI, the NSA, the lot. It's all included, but it also brings in MI6. It brings in part of Russia. It brings in part of Ukraine. It brings in so many different organizations, because Five Eyes were involved with this. We had our role to play, but there are other elements across Europe who were also involved. So whilst it seems like a nothing burger in the background to those of us in the UK, and predominantly in some ways it is a little bit of a nothing burger, actually it's not. It's going to be quite tremendous, and it makes me wonder what other elements of the UK knew about this, because you've got to remember, we were involved in the, not that we've seen the evidence of this, but just based on my own research, again, I can only give my point of view on this. We were involved in the 2020 elections theft. I mentioned last week about Gina Haspel coming over from CIA into MI6, working in with the CIA base in London, was connecting up with MI6 prior to the 2020 election, and then suddenly skedaddled very, very quickly around that time. And there's lots of evidence to suggest that we played our role in the theft of the 2020 election, but that will all be looked at in the future, I'm in no doubt. So there you go. Basic, really basic, because there are so many elements. It's actually complex. And what it does is it also implicates so many judges, state judges and federal judges across the UK, because of how they disposed of potential cases that were brought by the Trump team and others who were trying to prove the truth. Or the ones that came in from the deep state, and how they've swung it and effectively broken the law. I mean, we're talking a massive seditious conspiracy here for treason. So I've very much simplified this, by the way, but I just wanted to give a brief overview so people could start wrapping their heads around it, because we're going to see more of this come out. And it does, if it comes to the fore and it all gets shown publicly and it all gets dealt with in terms of justice, it will bring down at least half the deep state players in the US for sure, and some other places as well. It will bring down a ton of people, and we don't even fully know everything yet. There are people out there who fully understand it, like this is why Flynn was fired and prosecuted. This is why Roger Stone was dealt with and prosecuted. There's so many other things that are still going on now, court cases that are still going on now that haven't been rectified, and most people don't know because it's just quietly going on in the background. But actually, when it all comes out, it's going to be massive. It's going to be genuinely massive. And I hope that Gabbard is given the freedom to do what she needs to do to have the right people arrested. Now, just a quick chat of where we're about in America at the moment, because obviously we've seen this big move of MAGA moving against Trump and becoming more America first, because they've lost faith. They've lost faith. You know, they're not seeing the illegals being dealt with as they were told they would. They're not seeing prosecutions coming against the deep state players that we know are there, Russia collusion being one of the main things that happened, but certainly 2020 election being the other one. We're not, what he's saying about Epstein, the Epstein files and stuff, is really niggling a lot of American MAGA right-wing movement players, but also very much the left as well, which is why you're starting to see some unity. We're seeing a breakdown of that left-right paradigm. Very, very interesting. And by coming under the America First banner, they're very much stating the fact that we're about America and American people, and that's left, right, or centre. It doesn't really matter. We're kind of breaking down those paradigms, which I think is actually fantastic. So a lot of people are pissed off with Trump at the moment. They're pissed off with the Trump admin. And I've got to say, on the surface of it looks awful. He came out last night attacking MTG. He's been going after Thomas Massey for months now. And both of them, I'd suggest, I like them both in terms of what they're saying. I don't agree 100% with everything that they've said, particularly MTG. But whilst they look like they're taking a libertarian approach, they want the truth about Epstein. They want the truth about chemtrails. They want the truth about a number of different things that Trump doesn't want to touch. Now, this leads me, I will pull it all back together again. This leads me to another thing, another topic. If Trump wants the truth to come out, he cannot do that until the dodgy judges, those within the government, and I'm talking about things from the military industrial complex through to the CIA, through to the FBI. It's very, very difficult for Trump to talk about certain things until those seditious players within those teams have been highlighted and removed. Because you've got to remember, his team have gone in and they're like the 1% fighting the 99%, which is in the network, and it's their establishment. We've got our establishment here. It isn't just the government. It's within the judiciary system. It's within the police system. It's within the media. It's within the networks and makeup of everything that is part of a societal structure. And it's the same in the US. So if you're facing 99% enemies, it's not going to happen overnight. Plus, if you're going to roll out the truth, you've got to almost do it in a very digestible way for the people involved. So you've got no movement seemingly happening on the surface of it in the US. So all of these US voters who voted for Trump are aggrieved and pissed off. And I get it. I totally get it. And on the surface of it, it looks really, really bad. And part of this could be that Trump ends up being the baddie. He could end up being the bad guy. But ultimately, as long as the truth is coming out, it doesn't even really matter. It is about disclosure. It is about the veil lifting. It is about what is actually our reality. What does that really look like? Because at the moment, there's so much confusion and chaos, and no one knows who to trust. And it's the fog of war. It is clearly the fog of war, because we're seeing all this division and all this breakaway, and I'm all for it. Personally, I'm all for it. And the more chaotic it gets, the closer we are to getting it all broken down and getting to the truth. But I have some concerns within the Trump administration, and it would appear that a number of, if you like, MAGA or even American First voters are feeling the same way. The likes of Susie Wiles, who obviously we can connect to Netanyahu and very strongly connect to Pfizer. Big issue for me. Major issue for me. Allegedly, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have been playing slightly naughty games in the background. Is that true? I don't know. But again, I'm happy for any of them to be sacrificed if it means getting to the truth, as long as it is the truth. Pam Bondi, Pam, are you playing a game? Is this all down to timing? Is there a reason it's running the way it is? She is doing some good stuff in the background that doesn't get publicized, which has a lot to do with this Russia collusion stuff. So whilst I do end up, online giving Pam Bondi a bit of a slap, it is worth noting there are some good things going on in the background, but I don't trust her. Maybe I should, but I don't. Then we're seeing Tim Burchett's coming out. He's saying how well the economy's doing, and he's blowing smoke up the arse of Trump in terms of his position on the economics, when some things look better in the back at the forefront, but certainly in the background, the American people aren't seeing the benefit of Trump's economic policy, and they're starting to become aggrieved by that. And Tim doesn't want to talk about that side of it, which you wouldn't. Logic tells you, but again, transparency, guys, truth. It all boils down to what matters most is the truth coming out. That's what we need. Truth quickly followed up by accountability. That would be good. But we're watching the DOJ move at such a slow pace. It's ridiculous. But if you want to then turn it on its head, what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing a heck of a lot of people call for the Epstein files, and that is across the board, left, right, centre. People want to know. They want to know the truth. And what we want to see is that lead to all the other files that we know are likely out there from all the other island owners, from all those involved with the trafficking side of it. I mean, we're talking multi-billion-dollar networks. And what? Trump admin is stonewalling the truth on that. No, it doesn't sit right with me. But what you've got is people begging for it and begging for it. And that's good. That's a good place to be. I think timing is critical on a lot of this. I think there is a lot more happening in the background than we're aware of. And it has to work that way, because if the likes of Adam Schiff got hold of it, they would certainly be immediately trying to manipulate and intimidate and collude with others to break that down, because they're really worried. Adam Schiff, by the way, is a major, major deep state player. He is one of the most repulsive human beings out there. And I want to know the truth about the story connected to him and the Standard Hotel incident that happened a number of years ago, where and I might have to code this for YouTube, but a young Black boy was found expired whilst handcuffed to radiators, having been raped incessantly by Adam Schiff. That's the story. That's the story. And it usually will cover up all the rest of it. Is that what they've got on him? I would imagine it's something like that or something very similar. These are all allegedly because they've yet to come out as having been proven in court and so forth. So you've got these people that are in place. Now, another one, John Brennan, you know, you're thinking, who's this character? Who's this John Brennan? Why do I dislike him so much? Have a look at 9/11 and have a look at what John Brennan's role was within that. Tucker Carlson's recent series on 9/11 explains John Brennan's role very well, actually. So I would advise you to go and look at that. But another thing is Trump can't come out with all this stuff. He can't talk yet about the geoengineering. He can't talk yet about the COVID jabs. He can't talk yet about any of it because he's got to look like he's maintaining a certain position for a very small country that's surrounded by enemies that have caused nothing but devastation since their inception in 1948. So what do we see happening at the moment? Well, we see a small number, but a number of what were right-wing conservative commentators now seemingly turning against the Trump admin. But what they're doing is dropping truth bomb after truth bomb after truth bomb. And you can predominantly start looking at the likes of Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, MTG, Thomas Massey, Nick Fuentes to some degree, and Dave Smith and all these other commentators now coming out and talking about things like 9/11, like JFK getting shot, like the jabs, like the truth about the Russia collusion, like Bridget Macron, for example, Charlie Kirk and what happened to him. And Tucker and Candace are really leading the way on dropping these truth bombs. And they're doing the job that Trump can't right now. And I think Trump wants them to do it. And I think they know Trump wants them to do it. I think there's a lot of theatre taking place. I think everyone's got a role. Everyone is an actor with a role to play, or almost everyone. And we're seeing the world being woken up through a number of different angles. And what is interesting about watching Tucker and Candace now is, from what they're saying, is their viewership is very much left, right, and centre. This is non-partisan. It's across the board. It's just human beings wanting to know the truth. And I love that. I love that. And if that means at the moment, on the face of it, they're turning their back on Trump, like I said last week, I don't care. The truth is the truth. Do I think Trump knows exactly what's going on and what he's doing? Yeah, I probably do, actually. Just based, because if you look back as well, what Trump was saying about Russia collusion, what Kash Patel was saying about it, what Devin Nunes was saying about it, back in the day. I mean, it was Nunes and Kash Patel who really opened up the Russia collusion story. They were the ones who suddenly went, hang on a minute, something's wrong here, and brought a load of evidence and suggestion that, hang on, something's happening here that shouldn't be happening. And they both took their lives in their hands in order to get this information out. So for me to believe now that Nunes and Patel have suddenly turned against the American people, I find very, very hard to digest. I don't believe it. I think there's a bigger game at play here. But I love the fact the American people, who aren't necessarily looking at it that deeply, but they are actually standing up and calling this out now. This idolatry is gone. What they want is the truth, and it's irrelevant if it ends up blowing up that Trump's an awful guy. They don't care. They want the truth. And this is in a great position to being in this great awakening. And all started back with the Russia collusion. And we now find ourselves in this place. So all the same players were involved, but we now find ourselves heading into 2026. And Tulsi Gabbard is now talking about treason against Obama, seditious conspiracy for treason against Obama and Clinton and the other players, Clapper, Comey, Brennan, you know, head of FBI, head of CIA, the DNI. These are key players in the Russian political, in the US political scene. So anyway, that's how it all kind of ties together, and that's where we are at the moment. And we're hoping, obviously, to see something come against Obama. What's Bondi doing? What's Kash Patel doing? Who knows? Who knows what they're playing at right now? I'd love to see him get on with it. If you want to see someone trying to take action, look at Tulsi Gabbard. I've always liked Tulsi. I could be proven wrong. She could be a bad woman. But at the moment, I see no evidence of that. And I've never got that vibe from Tulsi. I've always felt actually she was incredibly authentic and genuine, and I don't think she's playing a game. But she's also being within the deep state, within the US government, she's also being blocked at every turn where possible, as much as they can do it, you know, and she's still fighting. She's almost standing alone. And I hats off, Tulsi, hats off, love. So that's where we're at. Thought I'd give a quick overview. Sorry if that's a bit garbled and a bit confusing. If you've got any questions, drop them in. Please like and share and subscribe. I'm going to be doing some more of these as we roll out. I thought I'll deal with the Russia collusion one first, because it's the one I find the toughest, because it's very hard to simplify, as it's so incredibly complex and there's so many elements involved. But I wanted to highlight that the UK are involved and were involved in the Russian collusion, very much like I believe they were in the 2020 election and other things that have happened since. And Trump is now turning and facing the BBC. And I think I'm right in suggesting that when we go through, because I think it will go through the courts, and when that's unraveled, not only will we find out about that, we will find out about the 2020 election, we'll find out their role in the Russia collusion in terms of promoting the fake story, promoting the Christopher Steele fake dossier. And I also think that we'll find out a lot of the deeper, darker, dirtier secrets that the BBC have been holding to their chests for decades. We hope. We live in hope. We hope. But anyway, guys, have a fantastic weekend. I'm going to be doing some more of these. I'm going to pick a topic next time I understand better, so I can go into a bit more detail. But I hope that my limited knowledge has at least given you an overview as to what this whole Russian collusion thing is about, the fact that it's not gone to bed yet, and about the fact that I think the UK are going to be implicated moving forward. Anyway, God bless. Have a great weekend, and we'll speak soon.